Good morning and welcome to another conversation with Mose. And as always, I pray life is treating you well wherever you are in the world and that you're one day closer to your dreams, hopes, prayers, and aspirations coming true. First, I want to say thank you for listening. Thank you in advance. Thank you for just showing up and supporting what I do. I really, really, really appreciate it. And before I get into it, I'm actually going to read an excerpt from one of my favorite authors, my favorite African American author. Actually, gay Black American author is Daniel Black. And this is from his book, Black on Black. The reasons I write. I write because I believed I was ugly. Then I wrote myself into beauty. I write because I hated who I was. And then God told me I was divine, and shame had no place in a divine soul. I thought that was appropriate for today's podcast for the day. And today's podcast is America, you're in danger, girl. Let me say that one more time. America, you in danger, girl. And I took that excerpt from, of course, that quote from Whoopi Goldberg in the movie Ghost. That was many, many years ago. That's actually my favorite quote from that movie. I think it's a lot of people's favorite quote for that movie. And from what I understand, she made that up. I guess she was impromptu when they were filming that movie years ago. And the reason I call it America, You're in Danger, Girl, is I want to know how you're doing in this version of America. I've been talking about myself, and of course I am going to talk about myself, but I want to know how are you doing in this version of America? And what I mean by that is, what are your steps to process what's going on in the world? Period. The country, the world, the atmosphere. What are you doing? You know, what are you doing with your kids? What are you doing with yourself, your spouse? And I have a couple questions I want to know. Again, not so much, I just want us to ask these questions and see what we're doing. And I'm actually open to suggestions myself. But what I've been doing, actually, I started working on my 14th poetry book. My Dog is Black, too. And basically, I've called it that. I was inspired because of my dog, Langston, and he is black. But it's based on my experiences in Oklahoma and the places that I've taken Langston for walks and grocery stores and places that I've taken him. My partner and I, the way we're treated when Langston is with us in white spaces. And it's just interesting when we have him, white women, white people seem to treat us differently when he's on a leash and when he's around. And they'll come up to us and they'll just start talking to Langston. Oh, he's so cute. He's adorable, blah, blah, blah. Almost as if we're not there, to the point where it got me kind of aggravated. But I had to get past it. And I just thought it was interesting that the spaces that we would be in, even now, we've had Langston for 3 years now, and it just seemed as though wherever we were with Langston, especially, and again, in white spaces, the way they would treat us, as opposed to if he wasn't with us. So I just found it interesting. And I'm going to write that in the book. And a lot of the poetry is reflective of those experiences and also from this time. But I also want to talk about, are you depressed as well? Are you angry? And what are your feelings during this time? Are you the same? What are your children talking to you about? What are they asking you in terms of racism and in terms of the economy, jobs, opportunities, college? What are your discussions like right about now? What's really going on between you and your husband and your partners, your friends? Are you still having the same experiences? What's your sex life like? Is sex as top priority as it was maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago? And what I mean by that is, like, we're all going through a draining experience. I mean, draining. And We're all living it very differently. And we have to coexist with people. And I have to admit, I struggle with my depression. I really do. And I think sex is beautiful. I really do. But I'm older and I feel very in a corner when it comes to America right now. I really feel very, and again, this is not meant to be a political podcast. It's really, what are you doing to maintain your sanity, your dreams, your aspirations? What are you doing? Because we're going through a very tough time, America, and that's everybody. I'm not really speaking to black people at this time. I'm really speaking to everybody. What are we doing in this time? Are we snapping? Are we loving our family harder? Are we pushing them away? Are we engaging with people? Are we telling people how we really feel? Because I am. I'm telling people how I feel. And I'm struggling right now. Honestly, I'm struggling. I mean, I'm doing better probably than most people. You know, I do have a support system that I appreciate. But I'm still praying. I still believe. And there are times I do question God's decision, like what's going on. I still trust his process. I just don't always like it. And I appreciate my partner and our dog, Langston, for just getting me out of bed in the morning, just getting me up. And I'm appreciative that I am alive. And things could be very worse, very, very worse. And I know there are people out there going through even dire circumstances than me. But I really want people to encourage one another at this particular time and really be honest about how you feel. And how are your relationships with your coworkers, because people are talking, you know, like, for example, at my job, I don't want to hear about things that I see in the media every day. Like, I really cringe when people are talking about politics or recent events that may be traumatic for some people. And I think it's disrespectful to on a certain level, to discuss certain things when other people are experiencing. You know, it may trigger some people, you know, and I have my own triggers, and I'm really working on my triggers. I am diligently working on my triggers. And this podcast, my podcast show, is meant for people who suffer with triggers, people who suffer with getting out of bed in the morning. You know, everyday people that get up and trying to maneuver through a very crazy world, even before we got to this time. And then what do we do after this time? You know, some people are really finding out who they're with. You know, the one thing I know about, or what I believe about marriage and relationship, is this: you're going to go through some shit together, whether they're going through it or you're going through it. Same thing with your friendships. I personally question people's friendships now. I question myself. Am I a good friend? You know, but I believe that I am. But I'm the kind of friend that you have to be honest with. You know, if I'm going to be honest with you, I want you to be honest with me. And what I mean by that is, how do you really feel? If you need to cuss, then cuss. If you need to cry, then cry. Don't call and just have a superficial conversation with me about something when you know how you really feel. You know, like, for example, with relationships and friendships, I don't encourage people to get divorced or to stay married or to do whatever. I encourage people to be honest with themselves. How do you feel? How do you feel? Because sometimes I think we have expectations of people, including myself, to be there for us in a way that is not necessarily feasible or realistic. You know, you can't have your mother kiss the boo-boo anymore. And sometimes you just have to go through a painful process. You know, who does like being in pain or hurting? And we have to encourage each other at this time, as I've continued to say on every podcast, and just simply be honest. And to be honest with you, I don't know what my next moves are in terms of, I just know I'm doing what I enjoy, and I hope it leads me to the next situation. As you guys know, I'm back in college, and college school doesn't start back up until August 17th. So I'm trying to enjoy my summer, as best I can. And what I've learned to discover about myself and what's important to me right now is I've been exercising, I've been trying to eat right, but I've been working on my mind. My mental state has been troubled. And I feel like once I break through mentally, it'll domino affect everything else. Everything else will get better once my mind is free of some of the struggles that I'm struggling with. And it's not about thinking positive. I hate when people say that. It's, just think positive. I'm always thinking positive. I think positive every time I open my eyes, every time I do a podcast, write a poem, anything. Now, when I stop performing, when I stop doing stuff, listening to music, writing, reading, then you can worry. When I stop podcasting, when I stop using my voice for anything, then you can say, okay, Mose, what's going on? Because every move I make is done in positivity. I'm kind to people in positivity. I speak my truth in positivity. So everything I do is about being positive. So when people say, you got to be positive, think positive, I think positive every day. But I'm also reminded of the world that we're living in. I have to control my temper every time I walk out the house, like most of us. And I've gotten better at it, but I have migraines and I have headaches and I have stomach aches and I feel drained when I get home from work. And to be honest, I don't want to be bothered. I don't want to answer the phone. I don't want to, sometimes I don't feel like walking my dog. Sometimes I don't want to talk to my partner right then in that moment. I am working through that, and the only person I really talk to every day consistently is God. And I have very frank conversations with God. And I've been having those conversations since I was in my 20s. Very frank, very honest conversations with God. And sometimes I cuss, sometimes I'm screaming, sometimes I'm crying, sometimes I'm, but God knows who we are. And I believe in personal relationship with God. And when I mean personal, I'm talking about being honest with God about how you feel. If you can't be honest with God, who can you be honest with? In terms of, and like I said, I don't care how much you drink, how much you get high, whether it's on cocaine or crack or wine or reefer, whatever. You still got to come back to the problem. Still. And we can blame our spouses or friends on our problems. The only thing I can say about friendships and relationships is that, do you have supportive friends? Do you have a supportive partner? Now, if they're dismissing your feelings, that's something else. That's a whole nother conversation. But if they're really trying to help you through that time, then, but also you got to give them that same grace as well. Their problems might not be the same as yours, but you got to give them that same support that they're giving you. And you got to work through the arguments, and you got to talk to your kids. You can't be snapping at your kids either, and they can't be snapping at you. And it's a tough time for children as well, young people. And we got to have honest, real conversations, because lying to them does not prepare them for the future, to me. Whether they're going to college or going to kindergarten, you got to prepare them for a world that may not like them, or they may have to suffer through at times. And I think a lot of parents are trying to protect their kids from pain, which is, it's just not realistic to me. You have to prepare them. This is what you do when pain shows up at your door. Like even conversations like, I haven't really had it with my own parents, but when I'm not here, when I'm not in your presence, when I'm no longer in your presence, what do they do? Because some of us are working jobs that we don't like. And can you imagine working at a job and then all of a sudden losing one of your parents? You only get 3 days of bereavement. You got to go back to a job you don't like, that you're feeling some kind of way. Now you don't have the parent. or a child or somebody that you lost suddenly, and you have to go back to work and pretend that you're okay. You may or may not be able to get a therapist. I don't know. But this is where we are right now for me. And I feel like, what are we doing about it? Outside of prayer. I take walks every day. I get up. I got up at 4:00 in the morning to do this podcast before I go to work. That's how committed I am to it. And I don't have a big audience for my podcast, but I do like the people that are listening. I look at my numbers, the podcasts that are being downloaded the most, and it makes me feel good. I believe it reaches who it needs to reach. I do. And I'm trying to have more guests on my show that are like myself, like-minded in terms of their honesty about their endeavors, their goals, their feelings. Because like I said, right now, America is in danger. We are. You can feel it in the air. You can see it online. And it doesn't matter what walk of life, it's touching everybody in one way or another. Whether you're rich, poor, middle class, lower class, upper middle, lower class, whatever you want to call yourself, in every race. Of course, I believe black people are feeling it the most. And I want to know, again, what are you doing? How are you handling this America, this version of America? And I like recording everything right now and writing everything down because I want to remember this time so I can share it with my nieces and nephews and my family. And when I'm no longer here, when people can't hear my voice, they can pick up this podcast and say, okay, this is what he was doing. This is how he was struggling. Because someday, and then the other thing, I'm starting to let go of my fear of death. I've lost so many people to death. And being an older man now, I'm thinking about mortality and my mortality. And I'm always thinking, did I do enough in that day? Did I do enough? I'm always afraid that my life is going to go unfinished. There are things that I try to do intentionally. I mean, I having conversations with my siblings, with my parents, my friends, my partner. I'm very intentional about what I say and how I say it and when I say it, because I've had to rely on conversations from people that I've lost, that have died. I still do. I hear their voices telling me what I should do and how I should move and things that they share with me. And I carry those with me. And my screenplay, which I'm still working on, I can say that it is about my black gay experience. My black gay experiences in Atlanta. And it's a story that's never been told before. And I'm excited about it. And eventually I'll share more. But it's about those people that were in my life that poured into me, that made me who I am today. And I wouldn't be me without those experiences, even though they were painful and beautiful at the same time. I wouldn't be me if they hadn't existed. I would be a totally different version of this Mose. And I can say that. So I'm grateful for. The only thing I would do differently about people from my past that have passed on is I would have spent more time with them if I'd have known what I know now in terms of how people were or could be. I would have spent more time. I would have spent my time differently with them. I wouldn't have wasted a moment. So it's because I remember in 2004 when my second partner passed away, I lost my job like a week later. I was literally fired from my job that I had been at for a couple years. And it was actually on my mother's birthday, a week after. Here I am emotional. I had just signed a new lease on my apartment, and I think I was paying $700 a month. And I was devastated. I mean, here I am losing my job at a very painful time on my mother's birthday and right before my birthday. And I was really shocked. I was numb, actually. So what I ended up doing was going to Boston with my partner at the time, his family. I went to Boston for like, I think it was like a 4 or 5 days, and I wasn't doing anything. Why not? So I took my severance money and I bought a plane ticket, part of it, and went to Boston. And I stayed there for like a week, and I needed that, you know, and I had people around me at the time to support me and encourage me, but it was a very painful time. You know, my gas was off, and I was looking for jobs, and it just wasn't happening. I think it took a good 3 or 4 months, and then mentally, I wasn't ready to go back to work. Mentally, I wasn't even ready. But I had no choice. I had to go back to work and suffer in silence. You know, and it's funny. It's not funny. I just remembered that story as I was talking about it. That I can't believe I got through that. And I've had a lot of moments like that in my life where things happened and I had to kind of go into autopilot, and I didn't have a therapist back then. And I was very self-destructive during that time. I was doing a lot of things to hurt myself. And fortunately, drugs never found me. I never had an association with drugs. I drank a lot, though. I drank a lot of liquor, and that part of my life sometimes is a blur. Parts of it are a complete blur. And it's really by the grace of God that I managed to live through that time. It really is. I really don't. I look back and I'm like, how did I get through that? And I was very much in the closet, very much, and I really didn't have any friends to speak of. And the ones I did have didn't know that part of my life. I didn't share that part. And it took some time for me to actually trust people, to let them into that part of my life. And I'm saying, I don't want people to go through that. I think you have to find at least one friend that you can really be honest with outside of God, because it's not really healthy to isolate yourself, because some people do find drugs. Some people overeat. Whatever vice becomes your God is not healthy for you. I didn't really go through an overeating stage, but I did put on weight. I would go through a period of mourning, and it would be hard for me to get out of bed. But to be honest with you, my saving grace is music. I can think of songs that really got me through that time. There are artists that don't even know the impact they've had on my life, and I'll never forget that. Lyrically, musically, sonically, organically, music that just touched me. All races and backgrounds, whether it was dance music or R&B, gospel, I don't care, reggae, jazz, everything. It just touched me at the right moment. There are artists that just spoke to my soul, like Prince and BB and CeCe Winans and Janet and Layla Hathaway and Michelle and Cello and Madonna, even, like I said before in my last podcast. People that spoke. Matter of fact, I was watching a video of Madonna's, I believe it was from her Erotica album. And if you get a chance, check the video out. There's a video called Bad Girl, a song from her, I believe it's her Erotica album. And I just got emotional. And you have to see the video, but even when it was out, I don't know how old this video is, but I'm not going to tell you much about it. I really want you to go dig into the archives and check out this video. But I lived that video. Everything in that video, except for the ending, was my experience. She's definitely a Leo. And when you see the video, I believe you understand what I'm saying. It was a lived experience. Everything. Not exactly like her, but it was verbatim the things that I was doing to myself and what I was going through at the time and how I believed I handled my pain. And I just found myself weeping. I wept the first time I saw the video, and then I saw it. I haven't seen this video in years. And here I am crying. And I'm crying because I'm not that person anymore. That's why I was crying. And I was crying because I was that person years ago. And I guess I just want to encourage people out there that are going through these moments of isolation and pain, and you don't know what to do. But keep in mind that pain doesn't last forever, and this too shall pass. And I just want to talk about, again, just going through it, going through the process, living through it, talking to somebody, and sharing your story. Write it down, record it, do something to let people know how you feel. And I want to talk about I want to segue into into my All Things Moetic store. Stop by my store, take a look around, and see what you want. Maybe there's something in there for a friend that you want to get, that you want to encourage. Same thing about my books. My poetry books are me. Anything I'm saying is in a book. And like I said, my next book, hopefully I'm praying that it'll be out at least before the holidays. My dog is black too. And I believe this is going to be one of my best. I'm very proud of it. I'm doing something a little different, and I do think you'll be surprised. And as always, I pray life is treating you well wherever you are in the world, and that you're one day closer to your dreams, hopes, prayers, and aspirations coming true. Thank you again for listening.